Welcome everyone to week number 8 in Science 214. This is our last week together in our term. You are almost finished with Science 214. So let's see what we've got going on. All right, last week you finished working on your final project. Oh, this is a juvenile bald eagle. So the topics that y'all chose during this term we had quite a few on water quality issues in our communities, which was awesome because I'd rather it be a very specific location than water quality all around the world. That's a good topic too. Climate change, which also included extreme weather events, hurricanes, wildfires, and that sort of thing. And a couple of you also had the topic of fracking, which is a way to get fossil fuels, which we should be moving away from by now, right? And fracking causes lots of problems because you're actually pumping water down into the earth in order to break open the rock formations and get to fossil fuels. And this creates what? Water quality issues, again, going back to the first topic. Suicide and mental health issues in our young people. This is very important now, because we have so many incidents of this that we see all the time now. And we've got to figure out a way to help people and to stop this from happening. Microplastics pollution, this is one of my favorite topics. Now, I know this is in the news now because everybody's trying to sell you something on TikTok Shop or wherever it is, honestly. But it is a real problem because plastics break down in nature. We dispose of so much plastic out there. It breaks down in nature and forms tinier and tinier and tinier bits, and these end up in places where we don't want them, like our drinking water, like the animals that we use as food, and eventually in our bodies. So microplastics is a real issue. Air quality, this is particularly important in people who already have health issues like COPD, like asthma, like heart disease, diabetes, there's so much more. Air quality is a particular problem in urban areas, but also in suburban areas too. COVID and pandemic issues, we're all still dealing with that. Don't you hear about people even now that are infected and have the symptoms of COVID? Yeah, I have. And then the final issue, which is a good one, is the underrepresentation of minority women in STEM fields. Even just women in STEM fields is something unusual. So this is a very important topic. If you want to use me as a role model, feel free. I graduated when I was 20 years old with a degree in biology, and I have been working in science since I was 20 years old and have loved every minute of it. That's another thing to encourage you to do. Follow your passion, follow what you enjoy, and you will never have to be one of those people who grumbles about going to work every day. I certainly did not and have not and still don't, because I love what I do. Don't get a business degree if that's not what you are passionate about. I'm just saying. All right. So the topic this week is scientific literacy and also civic engagement, but scientific literacy. So let's talk about that for just a minute. What the heck is scientific literacy? This is a skill set where people understand science, even if they're not scientists, understand how it works, and understand how to go about answering questions having to do with scientific issues. So let's break it down a little bit, shall we? First of all, you need to understand how science works, right? Scientists have to develop questions, design experiments, carry out the experiments, evaluate the data, publish their work, and in peer-reviewed journals, right? And then the process starts all over again. This is how science works. Now, at the beginning of COVID, this drove me bananas because people were saying, well, why don't the scientists know about this? Because it was a brand new virus that the world had never seen before. That's why. Yes, there was a SARS-CoV-1. It was not transmitted the same way as SARS-CoV-2. It mainly infected camels. Yeah, totally different. So we had to study it before we could understand it. We had to study it before we understood how it was transmitted. You realize in the beginning, we didn't even know how it was transmitted, which is kind of crazy, but it's true. So you have to understand how science works in order to understand the whole process, right? Then you need to have a basic understanding of scientific topics. That's why you take science classes all through school, right? Like, you need to know that a cell is a basic unit of life, and that when something's wrong with your cells, something's wrong with the organism. Organisms are made up of cells. You need to know what DNA is. DNA is the molecule of heredity, and how important it is. It determines the traits that every organism has. You need to understand what an ecosystem is, that species live together in an environment in balance. And when you throw things out of balance in an ecosystem, bad things happen. You need to understand basics of chemistry. What's an acid? What's a base? Basics of physics. What is light? How does it work? Energy. How does that work? There's so much more. Just the very basics of scientific topics, because you can always add to the basics. And that's what you have to do when you're researching a topic. Then you have to know how to research issues. This is what you've been doing in our course. You have been practicing your research skills to find information about a topic. You've been using the Shapiro Library and sources from the Shapiro Library. Once you graduate from SNHU, you will not have access to the Shapiro Library. So what are you going to do then? All right, everybody uses Google, right? Don't just Google something. No. Got heartburn? Don't just Google it. No. Go to WebMD or something for something like that. But think Google, but think Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a database full of scientific articles about all types of scientific topics. Another really good database is called PubMed. PubMed. Great resource. A huge database of scientific articles of all kinds. You think it would be just medicine, but it's not. It's all science. So you have learned how to research issues. You have to pick really good search terms. You have to pick relevant articles that you're going to reference. You've got to pick out the information from them, right? So you practiced all that during this term. And then finally, you need to be able to communicate your findings. In the week 6 assignment, that short paper, where you picked out a key piece of information and you figured out a way to change the wording to help a diverse audience understand what it means. That is terribly important. Communication is important for scientists, but also for people who are trying to talk about scientific issues. Very, very important to get your point across. And then you're also going to talk about civic engagement. We talked about this in the very beginning of the course, but we're circling back around to it. Action to effect change, right? So once you are scientifically literate about a particular topic, then you want to change things in the world, especially if it's in your community. Your voice needs to be heard about issues. You can't just sit back and wait on somebody else to do it, because they won't. But big businesses will, and banks will, and people who sell real estate. I mean, there's no evil in all this. That's just how their businesses work. But we are members of our communities, and we should be putting out there what we think is important for our governments to be doing. And for other people to do. We can't count on the government to do it all. we can help with this, right? So that's civic engagement. And I've already used the example of SARS-CoV-2 and COVID because that was an example of science in action in our lifetime. What is due this week? Only discussion board postings. You have turned in that big project. So this week you have discussion board postings. Your initial post, you're going to use your topic that you chose for your final project. What's the impact of this on your community, whether it's climate change or suicide or water quality or whatever it is? What's the impact on your community? Why is scientific literacy important for this particular issue? And how does the interpretation of information affect decisions made, right? This is why you need to get all your science in line. If you're going to make a presentation before a school board or your county council or a community group, whatever it is, you have to have your facts in line and make sure you understand what all of it means before you put it out there so that appropriate decisions can be made. If you hit people with facts, they cannot dispute those. So use your facts, use your data from your scientific sources. And then in your 2 response posts, remember that initial post is due by Thursday before midnight. Your 2 response posts due by Sunday before midnight. Why is civic engagement important for that person's particular issue? How can people engage civically about this issue? And how does your community civically engage with it? Now, if you're living in a rural area of North America, air pollution in a city is probably not, in your wheel well. Yeah, it's probably not something that your community is particularly interested in, though it might be. But climate change would be, right? So how does your community civically engage with it? And finally, let me go to the right slide. Finally, we've got, what the heck did I do now? I got no clue. I have no clue what I did here. I'm forever doing something. Oh well, here I am. Hey. Turn in all your work by Sunday, June the 29th before midnight. Very, 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 very important because the course closes at midnight. The computer closes it. I don't have any control over that. I can't take assignments after that. I can't put assignments in. That's the way the computer works. So realize that. I'm still trying to get me into. There you go. Incomplete requests must be made before the end of the term. If you're stressing out about the last few assignments in the class and you can't get those in time, then we can request an incomplete. However, the requirement is that you have to have successfully completed at least 70% of the coursework before we can request an incomplete. So please be aware of that. And it has to be done before the end of the term. I beg of you, please complete your course and instructor evaluations. Last term, I did not have a single person turn in an evaluation. And I was sad. So very sad. Because I like to read those. And I like to improve my work by reading those. Your evaluations help me as an instructor. They tell me what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong and how I can improve. They also tell my team lead and my dean how I'm doing. And there's information there about the course material. If you think any of that needs to be changed or improved in any way, you have a place to say something there. With that being said, I wish you the very best in the future and keep up the good work. We had an amazing term. Every single student who signed up for this class is still here at the end. That is the first time that this has happened at SNHU in all the courses that I've taught, which is amazing. So congratulations on that. And one last thing, I'm headed off for a very big trip, a trip of a lifetime. I'm going to Africa with my sister on a nature tour, August the 14th through the 29th. So be watching the news in case you hear of a tourist getting eaten by a lion, because it will be one of us. Yeah, we both have terrible luck about stuff like that. Anytime we've gone anywhere together, something has always happened. So just be watching the news, and then you can say, hey, that was my instructor for Science 214. If you'd like to keep in touch with me and email me afterward and find out how it went for me, please do. If you'd like to be friends with me on Facebook, just look for me, Janie Sigmon, you'll find me. And I'm sure I'll have things posted there from our Africa trip as well. With that being said, I hope that you have a wonderful week number 8. And if you need anything, I'll be checking my email all day long every day. Please email me, m.sigmon@snhu.edu. Have a wonderful week, and congratulations on making it through the term.